Israel's armored forces are no longer operational. Not weakened, not degraded, completely neutralized. Every tank production facility lies in flames. Maintenance depots have been reduced to rubble. Logistics hubs that once kept the Morava fleet running have been obliterated with surgical precision, leaving no possibility for recovery within any time frame relevant to this conflict. In over 30 years of studying mechanized warfare, I've never witnessed an armored force rendered impotent without a single tank-on-tank battle. What Iran achieved in just 72 hours was not a mere tactical win. It was a methodical dismantling of Israel's ground combat power, executed not on the battlefield, but in the industrial, logistical, and maintenance networks that underpin modern armored operations. The Merkava tank is more than a vehicle. It embodies the very core of Israeli ground strategy, the armored fist that has projected military power since 1967. The entirety of Israel's ground combat doctrine assumes the availability of the Morava. Combined arms tactics, artillery coordination, infantry support, all hinge on armored maneuvers being the decisive element. Remove that capability, and the ground forces are left equipped for a type of warfare they can no longer conduct. Iran recognized this, and over the course of 3 nights struck systematically, dismantling it layer by layer. The Tel Hashover maintenance complex, where major Morava overhauls and upgrades occur, was hit by 47 cruise missiles in a precise sequence designed to collapse the main assembly hall, destroy specialized tooling areas, and ignite warehouses storing critical parts. At the Hatzerim logistics base in the Negev, the hub for tank ammunition, replacement tracks, and powertrain components, 34 impacts obliterated operational capability for months. Meanwhile, the EMI factory complex in Ramat Hasharon, where Morava hulls are fabricated and systems integrated, was targeted directly at the production line. Welding stations, armor plate cutting, and integration bays were all destroyed, while administrative structures remained untouched. By the dawn of the 4th day, Israel's tank fleet was operationally finished. Not because every tank was destroyed, though hundreds were, but because the entire industrial and logistical ecosystem sustaining them no longer exists. This is strategic warfare executed with precision by those who understand that victory in modern conflict is not achieved by annihilating enemy troops, but by dismantling the enemy's ability to deploy them. To analyze the implications, 3 questions emerge. How did Iran identify and simultaneously strike every critical node in Israel's armored supply chain? What does this targeting intelligence reveal about the planning duration behind this operation? And what happens to a force built around tanks when those tanks can no longer operate? Additionally, why is American emergency resupply incapable of restoring what was destroyed? When Israel's ground power collapses while Iran's remains intact, who controls the battlefield? And how will armored warfare in the Middle East change when one side retains tanks and the other does not? The most striking aspect of this campaign is the completeness of the targeting. Iran didn't merely hit a few facilities. Every major site involved in tank production, maintenance, upgrades, ammunition supply, and distribution was struck within a 72-hour window. Many locations were hit multiple times, in an order reflecting years of intelligence gathering and operational preparation. Tel Hashover was always the prime target, given its irreplaceable role. It is the site for repairing battle-damaged Maravas, performing engine overhauls, installing armor upgrades, and integrating trophy active protection systems. Once Tel Hashover was destroyed, the concept of sustaining a tank fleet through prolonged combat collapsed. No alternative facility possesses equivalent capability. The 47 missiles striking Tel Hashover were carefully sequenced to maximize cascading destruction. The roof of the assembly hall fell first, bearing lifts and specialized tooling beneath reinforced concrete. Parts warehouses were struck with incendiary warheads, igniting stored rubber lubricants and composite materials that burned for 18 hours, consuming inventories accumulated over years. Hatzerim, the logistical node in the Negev, was hit next. The base served as the central distribution point for 120mm tank ammunition, replacement tracks, engines, and fire control components. It alone stored roughly a 30-day supply for sustained high-intensity operations. 34 cruise missiles detonated the ammunition bunkers in a carefully planned sequence, causing secondary explosions that registered on seismic monitors as far away as Jordan. The Ramat Hasharon factory strike reflects a forward-looking strategy, eliminating future production capability rather than only impacting existing tanks. This facility manufactures Marava hulls, armor plates, and integrates new vehicles. The strikes destroyed welding bays, cutting stations, and systems integration halls while leaving administrative areas and worker parking intact. Iran's targeting was surgically precise, hitting only what mattered operationally and avoiding wasteful destruction. From a professional standpoint, this demonstrates that Iran's intelligence on Israeli military infrastructure is both comprehensive and up-to-date. You cannot simultaneously hit every critical node in a complex industrial system without knowing their locations, internal functions, and layout. Such knowledge comes from years of patient intelligence collection. human sources, technical surveillance, industrial espionage, signals intelligence. Transforming that intelligence into a coordinated 72-hour strike campaign reflects a sophistication that Western analysts underestimated. The result is a fleet of Morava tanks that, while physically present in hundreds of motor pools across Israel, can no longer be sustained for operational use. Within days, readiness rates will begin to decline as vehicles break down with no possibility of repair. Within weeks, ammunition shortages will reduce firing rates. Within months, what was once a mobile armored force will become a static asset, incapable of executing maneuvers that defined Israeli ground power for decades. There is no quick remedy because what Iran destroyed cannot be reconstructed overnight. The Morava Mark II embodies the pinnacle of modern main battle tank design, combining advanced fire control, layered composite armor, the trophy active protection system that intercepts incoming anti-tank missiles, and a 1,500 horsepower engine capable of propelling 65 tons at remarkable speed. By any technical standard, it is among the most formidable tanks in service anywhere today. Yet, technical excellence does not equal operational sustainability. Iran's strikes revealed that the Morava's sophistication comes at a cost: logistical fragility. Main battle tanks are far from simple machines. The Merkava Mark IV contains thousands of individual components, many of which are highly specialized and cannot be sourced commercially. They must be produced to military specifications by defense contractors with security clearances and rare technical expertise, fire control computers, thermal imaging units, trophy radar and interceptor launchers, transmissions capable of handling the engine's torque. These are bespoke systems. When failures occur, replacement parts must be manufactured specifically for the Morava, stored in specialized facilities, and installed by technicians trained on exact procedures using equipment available at only a few locations. Iran did not target the tanks directly. It struck the infrastructure that keeps them operational. Tel Hashemer housed Israel's sole facilities capable of performing deep maintenance, engine rebuilds, transmission overhauls, and fire control diagnostics. Destroying Tel Hashemer did not erase the tanks themselves. It eliminated the ability to repair them once wear or damage occurs, and they will fail because combat operations push mechanical systems beyond their limits, while prolonged use accelerates deterioration, demanding constant maintenance. Contrast this with Iran's own armored forces and regional partners. Their T-72 variants, many locally upgraded, follow a different philosophy. They are less advanced technically, but far more sustainable under field conditions. Components are simpler. Maintenance can be performed with less specialized equipment. The supply chain does not rely on a handful of irreplaceable hubs. This is not a debate over which tank is better in technical terms. It is a question of which force can maintain combat operations when its logistics networks are targeted. Iran demonstrated that complexity without resilience is a strategic liability, exploitable by an opponent equipped with intelligence and precision strike capability. The Trophy Active Protection System exemplifies this principle. It offers Morava crews a rare defensive advantage and boasts high interception rates against guided missiles in real combat. But it is also exceedingly complex, requiring uninterrupted electrical power, specialized radar components, interceptor munitions that must be reloaded after each engagement, and software updates flowing through IDF integration channels. When the supporting maintenance and supply networks are destroyed, Trophy cannot be sustained. Tanks that have used up their interceptors cannot be reloaded if the facilities storing and distributing those munitions no longer exist. This vulnerability is not unique to Israel. Every Western military that prioritizes high-end technical platforms has created a dependency on specialized, centralized infrastructure that is difficult to replace. The American Abrams, German Leopard, British Challenger, each relies on logistic ecosystems susceptible to the kind of systematic infrastructure targeting Iran just demonstrated. This is a lesson defense planners must internalize. Technical superiority at the platform level is meaningless if the logistics architecture sustaining it can be dismantled within 72 hours of precise strikes. In Washington, I can imagine the discussions that followed damage assessments. Some advocated emergency tank transfers, airlifting M1 Abrams to Israel as a temporary solution. Others suggested accelerating deliveries of components and ammunition from U.S. depots. But experienced operational officers would quickly point out that none of this addresses the core problem. Iran has destroyed the maintenance infrastructure. The Morava and the Abrams are not interchangeable systems. They rely on different ammunition, fuels, parts, and maintenance protocols. Israeli crews are trained exclusively on Morava, as are maintenance personnel. Israeli logistics are designed around Morava supply chains. Introducing a different tank type does not solve the problem. It creates new gaps by attempting to sustain two incompatible fleets, while the infrastructure supporting both has been eliminated. Emergency shipments of parts are futile when the facilities that install them are rubble. Engines can be flown into Israel, but if the maintenance bays where they are installed are destroyed, the engines remain idle in crates. Replacement trophy interceptors may arrive, yet without functioning integration centers, they cannot be installed. The bottleneck is not supply availability. It is the specialized infrastructure required to convert supplies into operational capability. A deeper challenge confronts Washington, though it remains unacknowledged publicly. American tank production is finite, and U.S. reserves exist to meet American needs, not to replace another nation's entire fleet. Transferring hundreds of tanks to Israel to offset what Iran destroyed would degrade U.S. readiness for other theaters. These theaters include potential conflicts with China and Russia, which the Pentagon prioritizes above the Middle East in strategic importance. This underscores the reality of alliance dynamics. The United States will support Israel up to the point that such support does not compromise its own core strategic interests. Beyond that threshold, Israel operates independently. The deliberate destruction of its tank maintenance and production infrastructure has shifted the cost of meaningful assistance beyond what Washington can provide, without accepting unacceptable risk to its own forces. Ultimately, what this exposes is the fragility of security frameworks built on external dependency. Israel built its ground forces under the assumption that American logistical support would always be ready to step in when required. This worked only as long as the demand on U.S. logistics remained within limits Washington was willing to meet. Iran's strikes, however, have generated needs that exceed that threshold, and Israel is now confronting the reality of what happens when reinforcements cannot arrive because the cavalry is tied to other priorities. I have witnessed militaries lose their primary combat power before, most notably Iraq in 1991 and again in 2003. But what is occurring in Israel is strikingly different. Iraq's armored units were destroyed directly on the battlefield. Coalition air and ground forces physically eliminated Iraqi tanks in combat. Israel, in contrast, is seeing its armored capability collapse without the tanks ever engaging in battle. They are being incapacitated through the systematic starvation of their logistics. This creates a unique crisis, because IDF doctrine, training, and organizational structures all assume armored maneuver as the foundational element. When that foundation disappears, what remains lacks a coherent operational concept. Israeli ground doctrine emphasizes combined arms teams, infantry, armor, artillery, and engineers operating together in coordinated units, each element supporting the others. Armor provides protected mobility and direct firepower. Infantry ensures close-quarter security and urban combat effectiveness, and artillery delivers suppressive fires. But the system presumes the presence of armor. Remove the armor, and infantry becomes exposed to enemy tanks the force can no longer counter. Artillery loses the protection armor provides during movement. The combined arms team dissolves into isolated components incapable of mutual support, undermining the doctrine at its core. In practice, this means the IDF's ground combat effectiveness is degrading faster than the simple tank failure rate would indicate. The force was built around assumptions that no longer hold. Units trained for integrated operations are now struggling to function as infantry-only or artillery-only formations, roles for which their preparation was insufficient. Commanders accustomed to planning armored maneuvers are now facing tactical problems outside their experience and education. Meanwhile, Iran and its regional allies, including Hezbollah and affiliated forces in Syria and Iraq, retain their armored capabilities. They now confront an adversary whose ability to respond to armor has been methodically neutralized. The tactical equilibrium has shifted dramatically, making ground operations far more perilous for Israel. Infantry facing dug-in positions, supported by armor, faces near catastrophic disadvantage. This is the operational reality confronting the IDF in any scenario involving ground operations in Lebanon or Syria. Defeat in 21st century warfare does not necessarily look like a dramatic battlefield collapse. It can appear as the quiet, systematic destruction of the logistics and industrial networks that enable sustained combat operations. Tanks remain physically present, soldiers remain present, but the ability to use them effectively is gone. Without that capability, the operational concept collapses entirely. The broader lesson from Israel's tank crisis is clear and relevant to all militaries that have designed force structures, assuming that technical sophistication can offset logistical vulnerability. It cannot. Iran has shown that a patient adversary, equipped with intelligence and precision strike capability, can dismantle even the most sophisticated military force by targeting the infrastructure sustaining it, rather than the weapons themselves. And they achieve this using systems that Western analysts long dismissed as crude, inaccurate, or strategically insignificant. The cruise missiles that destroyed the EMI factory, Tel Hashmer and Hatzerim Depot, were not exotic hypersonic weapons. They were subsonic cruise missiles, some transferred from Russia, some produced domestically, guided by GPS-independent navigation systems. Yet they were employed with operational finesse, converting modest technical capability into strategic effect. This confirms a principle I have long maintained. Self-reliance in defense production is a strategic advantage that no alliance guarantee can replace. Iran developed its missile forces under sanctions, innovated its guidance technology without Western components, and built a targeting intelligence network from scratch. The outcome is a military capable of independent operation, decisive strikes, and sustained campaigns regardless of external actors. Israel, in contrast, possesses the region's most technically advanced tanks, but cannot maintain them because the logistics networks supporting those vehicles have been destroyed and cannot be rapidly restored. We have just observed the operational validation of a post-Cold War lesson too often forgotten. Wars are not won by the side with the most advanced equipment. They are won by the side that can sustain operations the longest. Sustainability demands depth in production, logistics, and the human capital of trained technicians and engineers. This depth only comes from long-term self-reliant development. It cannot be purchased, transferred, or borrowed during a crisis. Iran built this capacity. Israel did not. That difference is now shaping the war. Israel's tank fleet will not be restored in weeks, possibly not even in months, and certainly not within any time frame relevant to the current conflict. What Iran accomplished was not a tactical adjustment, but the strategic neutralization of Israel's ground combat capability, industrial base, and logistical network. The remaining tanks will continue to degrade as maintenance demands outstrip available capacity. In a short period, what was once the Middle East's most capable armored force will become a static collection of vehicles, incapable of repair, resupply, or operational deployment. This is what victory looks like when achieved not through battlefield heroics, but through meticulous intelligence and systematic targeting. It is a victory that cannot be reversed by American resupply, because the problem is not a shortage of tanks or parts. It is the absence of the infrastructure necessary to employ them. That infrastructure took decades to build. Iran eliminated it in 72 hours. The strategic consequences of this disparity will reverberate through every military establishment that observes these events and comprehends their significance. We have now seen Iran methodically dismantle Israel's air power, logistics network, and armored capability through precision strikes on critical infrastructure. We have seen Washington unable, or unwilling, to provide support at the scale required to replace what was lost. The question now is, what happens when Israel's military capacity is hollowed out, and the ground war that many feared becomes infeasible for one side to wage? Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.